Good morning, friends. We are meeting again for the 7th module of the subject Aesthetics and Philosophy for the PG course in Visual Arts. You know me, I am Deepak Kannal, ex-Dean of Faculty of Fine Arts, MS University of Baroda. Today, I am planning to discuss the notion of Alankara. Alankara normally is discussed towards the end of Indian aesthetic treatise, because in the later period Alankara remained the only important theory, and by 13th-14th century Indian Sahitya Shastra or Indian Saundarya Shastra was known as Alankara Shastra because it only kept revolving around Alankara. But it is one of the theories which has the longest longevity in the history of Indian aesthetics, because Bharata also speaks about Alankara. It's very interesting, as I told you, that most of the theories which we discuss in Indian aesthetics, the roots of those theories can be found in Bharata's Natya Shastra. In philosophy, they say Vyasochishtam Jagat Sarvam, or whatever has been discussed in the world has been already touched upon by Vyasa. I think we can extend the same saying in case of aesthetics also. Every theory in Indian aesthetics can be traced back to Bharata's Natya Shastra. Bharata speaks about Alankaras, but he speaks about only 4 Alankaras. And some of those Alankaras are not considered as Alankaras at a later stage. Now, what is Alankara? Alankara is embellishment. Alankara is decoration. A work of art stands different than an ordinary expression. When I say something, when I tell something to my friend, it doesn't become a piece of art. When exactly does it become a piece of art? When it gets decorated, when it gets embellished, when it is presented in a different manner. We talked about Riti in the previous session. So the manner is most important. So with the help of Alankara, we can embellish the manner of expression, and then it becomes an Alankara. But the Alankara which Bharata talks about, he considers Yamaka as an Alankara. Now Yamaka is rhyming, and if you see the later poetry, Yamaka almost becomes an obligation. Yamaka almost becomes a prerequisite for any poem. Rather, you do not come across a poem without Yamaka. Listen to any song, forget the poems, but even in a song there is always, it ends with a Yamaka. You know what a Yamaka is. The last letters, they match with each other. To give you an example, Paragahi Sandratayata Rangati, Fulasave Brungatati Tarangati. Now Rangati, they match with each other, and it becomes an example of Yamaka. Because why Bharata considers Yamaka as an Alankara? Because in Bharata's times, the poetry did not have this constraint. If you try to recollect the Gayatri Mantra, normally most of the people know it, and that is why I am using it as an illustration, not as a religious quotation. But in Gayatri Mantra, how do you recite it? Om Bhur Bhuvasva Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Now there is no Yamaka, there is no rhyming. So if you see the Vedic literature, though it's a very rich literature, you hardly come across rhyming in it, and that is why in those days rhyme too was considered to be an Alankara. Now I use these two terms, Yamaka and rhyme, one from Sanskrit and the other from English, and they exactly mean the same. So it's a very interesting thing. This parallelism is very interesting. The notion of figures of speech in English literature and the notion of Alankara in Indian literature is exactly the same. There is no difference between the two. The only difference which I can notice is the figures of speech are randomly put together. There are almost every figure of speech can be found in Indian literature, or every Alankara from Indian literature can be found in English literature. But in Indian literature, particularly in the later period, Indian critical literature, in the later period, there is a tendency of classifying everything very methodically. This is very interesting. Even Rasa Siddhanta earlier has been put forward in a very casual manner. But in the later text, you will find that it is very well classified. It is whether what exactly is the number of rasas. The issues which they take up are very technical issues. Similarly, here you can see a highly technical classification of these alankaras, which normally is not seen in the Western tradition. Otherwise, discussing alankaras sometimes becomes futile for the people who know about the figures of speech, because it is exactly the same thing which we are going to discuss. But we will try to understand how the Indian aesthetic tradition understands it. So, Bharata, as I told you, spoke about 4 alankaras. The different definitions we will take into consideration, and then we will switch over to the actual alankaras. Now, Dandi, one of the scholars who comes immediately after Bharata, and after an interval of 500-600 years, he says, Kavya Shobha Karan Dharman Alankaran Prachakshate. Kavya Shobha Karan Dharman Alankaran Prachakshate. All the dharman, yesterday we talked about dharma, the properties. So all the properties, all the qualities that decorate the work of art, that decorate the kavya, should be understood as alankaras. Very simple decoration. So he is talking about the embellishment. Kavya Shobha Karan Dharman Alankaran Prachakshate. These properties should be seen as alankaras. He has given a very simple definition of alankara. Vamana defines it a little differently and a little more complex manner. He says, Guna Nivritya Kavya Shobha Tasyat Atishaya Hetavo Alankara. Guna Nivritya Kavya Shobha. So he is also of the opinion that it is definitely embellishment. But Guna Nivritya, he tries to differentiate between the gunas. Yesterday we talked about the gunas and doshas. Guna Nivritya Kavya Shobha Tasyad Atishaya Hetavo Alankara. The intense use of it should be considered as alankara. And Vamana is also an important scholar. But the later scholars have contributed. I think the contribution of later scholars is more significant towards alankara than any of the other theories. They have not, after 9th, 10th century, you do not find any major contribution by the later scholars to the theory of rasa or to the theory of dhvani. But now these people have contributed significantly to the notion of alankara. Vishwanath, a very late scholar, he says, Shabdartha Yora Sthira Ye Dharmaha Shobhati Shayinaha Asthira iti Naisha Gunvat Avashyaki Sthiti. Now he is making a more categorical statement. He says, Shabdartha Yora Sthira Ye Dharma Shobhati Shayinaha. In Shabda and Artha, the Dharma which are Shobhati Shayina, jo Atishay Shobhakaran, which gives intense beauty to the expression. But Asthira iti Naisham Gunavad Avashyaki Sthiti. Though they embellish the literature, one important thing should be kept in mind, that they are transient. They are not. It is not a permanent quality of literature like the gunas. A guna, there can be a good piece of literature which doesn't have alankara at all. A lady can look beautiful without wearing a single ornament. So ornament is not a necessity for beauty, but guna is a necessity. Guna is a sthira dharma. Alankara, according to Vishwanath, is an asthira dharma. It certainly embellishes the work of art, but it is not a prerequisite of a work of art. It may have it or it may not have it. Even without alankara, a work of art can be a great work of art, which is not so in case of guna. Without guna, a work of art cannot be a great work of art. So guna is a sthira dharma, alankara is asthira dharma. So he says, ki asthira iti naisham gunavat avashyaki sthiti. And like guna, the sthiti here is not avashyak. It is an additional embellishment. Yes, it will certainly decorate it further, make it more palatable, but it is not a necessity of a work of art, according to Vishwanatha. Anandavardhana, whom we are going to discuss under the theory of dhvani, he says, Anantahi Vagvikalpaha. Anantahi Vagvikalpaha tat prakara eva alankara. There are various ways of expression. Now he is somewhere trying to collapse the notion of Riti and notion of Alankara. If you remember, Dandi said that Astanyeko Giram Marga. There are many ways of expression. Now exactly Vamana is saying the same thing in the context of Alankara. Anantahi Vakvikalpaha Tat Prakara Eva Alankara. There are various vikalpa. Vikalpa is options. There are various options of expressions. All those possibilities can be considered as Alankara. This is Vamana's definition. So all the four definitions are different from each other. The first one only said that it is the embellishing element of poetry. The other one, he talked about Alankara in a more elaborate manner. The third one believed that Alankara is not a prerequisite of an aesthetic expression, and the fourth one says that there are various possibilities and they may be recognized as Alankara. So it's interesting how they look at it, but I think the best definition is Alam Karoti iti Alankara. Alam is complete. I don't know whether you have seen any Sanskrit text. At the end of every Sanskrit text, it is written Ityalam. That is, हम लोग समाप्त लिखते हैं ना, वैसे Ityalam is iti alam. Now it is complete. So Alankara is the element which completes a work of art, nothing more than that. Which also gives a warning against overdoing the Alankaras. Our overuse of the Alankaras. You should use only that much of Alankara, na, so that the work of art looks polished and complete. A work of art, a good work of art also needs some polish. Even a beautiful person needs some kind of Alankarana or some kind of embellishment. Only that much of Alankarana is necessary for a work of art. Rather, if you cross that limit, Alam Karoti iti Alankara, if you think now that the work of art is complete with this much of embellishment, you should not or you must not add more Alankarana to it. But if you wear too many ornaments, it doesn't look good. Probably it spoils the beauty, doesn't it? And not only that, we are going to discuss it at a later juncture. It says that if the work of art doesn't have the soul in it, if the work of art doesn't have the real spirit in it, then the Alankarana looks like the embellishment of a dead body. Because Alankara cannot make a work of art. Alankara cannot make a work of art a great work of art. Alankara can only decorate a work of art, polish a work of art, make it more presentable. Let's not forget it. This is Alankara is not though the Alankara Shastra says Alankara is every theory in India claims that their theory is the soul of poetry. Dhvaniratma kavyasya, Ritiratma kavyasya, Rasatma kavyasya. Similarly, the Alankara Shastris also say that Alankara is the soul of poetry. But Alankara is not the soul, Alankara is the face of the poetry. Alankara is the appearance of the poetry. Right? Sometimes there are some Alankaras which can really change the accent of the poetry, but that happens very rarely, very seldom. Anyway, so there are, and the most important thing is it should be pratibodhita. Pratibha is genius. It should be pratibodhita. Only like we talked about Upama. Upama is an Alankara which is used in Indian tradition as well as in the Western tradition, and Bharata also talks about Upama. Upama is simile. Now what is simile? There is, we try to recognize the similarity between two things, and that is used as a simile. But does that mean that if you put together any two things and it becomes an Alankara? No. Actually from that comparison, some beautiful expression should emerge. Then only it becomes a simile. And that is why here Sahitya Shastra warns us that the Alankara is not simply a comparison. It should be pratibodhita. It should be elevated with your poetic fancy. There has to be a base of poetic fancy to Alankara. Otherwise, it is not an Alankara. It is merely a comparison. Every comparison is not an Alankara. Sometimes I give an example that if you say that the lower part of India is like a triangle. Now, is it literature? Is it poetry? The comparison is there. It is like a triangle. but is there the poetic fancy? Is it pratibodhita? So every comparison is not alankara, every comparison is not upama. For it has to have a kind of poetic fancy in it, then only it becomes an alankara. This must be borne in mind. So here, further, as I said, that unlike the Western tradition, the Indian Alankara Shastra has analyzed the Alankara in a very methodical manner. These Alankaras have been classified in three major categories: the Shabda Alankaras, the Artha Alankaras, and the Ubhaya Alankaras. Some of the Alankaras, some of the embellishments are based on the use of proper words. So they play with the words and create Alankara. Sometimes the Artha plays the role in creating the Alankara. That is called the Artha Alankara. And sometimes the Shabda and Artha, both of them are equally important. Now you cannot separate the Shabda and Artha in that kind of Alankara. There is only one great Ubhaya Alankara, that is Pan. In English it is called Pan, in Sanskrit it is called Shlesha. So we will talk about it towards the end of this session. Let's discuss the Shabda Alankaras first, because they are the simplest of them. Just now we were talking about Yamaka, the rhyme. There is an extended scope of rhyme, and in medieval literature, Yamaka almost became an obligation. As I told you earlier, we have already discussed it, that in Vedic literature or in ancient literature, Yamaka was not a necessity. Yamaka was more of an embellishment, but in the medieval literature, you do not come across any literature, any kavya without Yamaka. It ceases to be an alankara, and it becomes a necessity for any verse. But that is in the later period. It may not be possible for us to discuss all the alankaras, because there is a long list of alankaras that you will find in Indian Alankara Shastra. We will discuss the most important of them. Like in Shabda Alankaras, the most fanciful alankara is Anuprasa. Anuprasa is alliteration. In English it is called alliteration, where a particular phoneme is repeatedly used. A particular sound is repeatedly used. A particular akshar is repeatedly used to create a poetic fancy. So, I'm sure you people must have heard so many examples of it. One of the best examples, again yesterday we were talking about Jayadeva's Gita Govinda. So if we are talking about poetic fancy, I think Anuprasa is the best example of poetic fancy. Of course, sometimes it tends to be too fanciful. We'll talk about it later. But the best example of Anuprasa can be found in Jayadeva's literature. We have been referring to Jayadeva again and again, but he deserves to be referred to because he is one of the greatest poets that we have produced. Now, one of his couplets which we quoted yesterday can be a beautiful example of Anuprasa also, that is Lalita Lavanga Lata Parishilana. Lalita Lavanga Lata Parishilana. Now this repetition of La is so beautiful that even if you do not understand the meaning of it, you can enjoy the beauty of that particular expression. But sometimes what happens, as I told you, that this fancy becomes too fancy, and the beauty of the literature is lost in it. I'll give you a Marathi example which you will not understand, but you don't have to understand it, because without understanding it, you will come to know what exactly I am trying to say. Now there is another piece of Anuprasa which says, Vamshi Nada Tati Tila Kati Tati Kovo Nikoti Pati Kakshe Vamaputi Swashunga Nikati Vetati Hi Gomati Jevi Nira Tati Taru Taravati Srishama Dehi Uti. Now, is it a poem or a circus? Vamshi Nada Tati Tila Kati Tati Kovo Nikoti Pati Kakshe Vamaputi Swashunga Nikati Vetati Hi Gomati. This doesn't give you an aesthetic experience. This baffles you. This certainly baffles you. The ability of the poet to compose the words in a very fanciful manner might surprise you, but it certainly does not offer you an aesthetic experience, because the poet is talking about the Basuri of Lord Krishna. Now, would you ever think that he is talking about the sound of the Basuri? Because this kati kati phati phati jo hai, where is the beauty of that sound of a flute? Some later scholars, some 20th scholars have mocked at this poetry, they say that Vaman Pandit, the poet who has written this poem, has given a tea party to Lord Krishna in this poem, because the tea keeps appearing again and again. Now this kind of anuprasa is certainly overdoing. Do you understand the meaning? This is a Chitrakavya. This is the Alankara, which is not, it does not enhance the beauty of the poem. Rather, sometimes it kills the beauty of the poem. This is over decoration. You get my point? There are beautiful examples of anuprasa in every vernacular language. Even in your languages, you will be able to find so many examples of anuprasa. But one interesting thing that we need to refer to at this juncture, that the Indian understanding of phonetics. You know what phonetics is? Phonetics is Uchchara Shastra. How do you pronounce things? Now, if you see, the Western languages are not phonetic in nature. Jocularly, we keep raising questions like beauty but and beauty put. Why beauty is but and beauty is put? There is no reason behind it. There is no logic behind it. Now, jokes apart, we know that the Western languages are not perfectly phonetic. There are silent letters. Sometimes A is to be pronounced as O, sometimes it is to be pronounced as A, sometimes it is to be pronounced as A. So, and there is no reason behind it, there is no reasoning behind it. In Sanskrit, that is totally absent. Sanskrit is a perfect phonetic language. And not only that, unlike the other languages, the Sanskrit alphabets have been distributed in different vargas. There is a varga which are based on the phonetic system. Now there are swaras and vyanjanas. There are vowels and consonants in English also. Which are the Indian English vowels? A, E, I, O, U. Now why A, E, I, O, U do not come in the beginning of the alphabet? The position at which these consonants, these vowels appear. What is the logic of putting A at the beginning and E at the fourth position and O at a later position and U almost towards the end of the alphabet? There is no reason. At least we today do not know a logical reason behind it. But in Sanskrit poetics, all the swaras are put together. A, A, E, E, U, O, O. You know that these are called swaras. And they say that the vyanjana is to be uttered without the swara. The swara comes from the kantha. Actually, when you say ka as vyanjana, actually ka is not a vyanjana. Ka is a vyanjana. Ka is a vyanjana. When you add a to it, it becomes ka. When you add a to it, becomes ka a. Do you get my point? And all these swaras, they are to be uttered without touching your lips to each other. Have you ever noticed it? Just utter all the swaras and you will realize that you don't have to touch your lips. The A, A, E, E, U, O, O, A, I, Aha. You don't have to use your lips at all. The vowels on the consonants on the other hand are pronounced using different parts of your mouth. Like k, k, g, g, n. Now what are you using? You are using they are guttural. When you say p, p, b, b, m, all these consonants are uttered using your lips. Your lips are touching each other. Then say t, th, d, dh, n, t, th, d, dh, n. Have you ever noticed that all the letters from that particular Varnamala are to be pronounced using a certain part of your mouth? Sometimes you touch the palate, sometimes you touch the under part of your tooth, that is called dental. So some Varnas are dental, dantavya, some Varnas are labal, some Varnas are talavya, touching the level. Isn't it amazing? And each of them has an anunasika of its own. In English, there are only two anunasikas, M and N. So whenever you want to put anuswara, either you will have to put M or you will have to put N. But it has its own problem. Like if you want to write bana, you write bana. In English, you have to write bana because the n is absent over there. If you want to write vyanjana, actually what you spell is vyanjana. Actually, the y or n, vangmay. Vangmay has a different anunasika, vangmay. How would you spell vangmay in English? It is practically impossible. How would you spell Krishna in English? Either you will have to call it Krishna or Krishna or Krishna. All three are wrong. It is Krishna. So this is all these things are impossible to transliterate in English language. And the most interesting thing is the first two varnas from each set, each varga, are the mrudu varnas, and the other two varnas are the kathora varnas. Then in each pair, the second letter is called Mahaprana letter. K, K. You are uttering K from here, and you are uttering K from here. D, D. P, P. B, B. Have you ever noticed it? How scientifically it has been designed. Now, when the Mahaprana comes, the Oja comes. If you want to create Oja in your Anuprasa, because Anuprasa can have different expressions. Anuprasa is not simple repetition of a particular letter. You use Anuprasa to enhance your poetry. You use Anuprasa to add beauty to your poetry. So naturally, you will have to give a thought to it. Yeah. Because if I am writing about, yesterday I gave you an example, the Ravana Stuti. Now in Ravana Stuti, the letters like the, there is a poem in Marathi, गिरी से मस्तकी गंगा आवेशे लोटली बळे धबाबा धावती धारा धबाबा तोय आदळे. Now this धबाबा धावती धारा धबाबा तोय, this gives you a feeling of gusto. Now here I must have the intelligence to choose the right sound to be repeated over there. Now, so that the Mrudu Varna and the Kathora Varnas. So, which of these is to be selected for the Anuswara is very important. Now, see how scientifically it has been discussed. I don't think the other languages have given such a deep thought to the Alankaras. So, in Anuprasa, again, there are three types of Alankaras. The Upanagarika. Yesterday, we were talking about the Pravrittis, and I told you the same Pravrittis, Upanagarika, Parusha and Komala. And in Upanagarika, the best example of Anuprasa would be Chandana Charchita Neelakanevar Pita Vasana Vanamali. I gave the same example yesterday also. In Parusha, if I want to give a popular example, perhaps all of you must have heard that famous song Vande Mataram by Kavi Pradeep. उसमें ये देखो पंजाब यहाँ का हर चप्पा हरियाला है, यहाँ का बच्चा बच्चा अपने देश पे मरने वाला है, ढाला है इसको बिजली ने भूचालों ने पाला है, मुट्ठी में तूफान बन रहा है और प्राण में ज्वाला है. The way ch and l have been repeated over there, they give a different effect. The earlier effect was चंदन चर्चित नील कलेवर पीत वतन वनमाली and ढाला है इसको बिजली ने भूचालों ने पाला है. Isn't it a different expression? It is not only different selection of words, but it is a different expression altogether. So this is the beauty of Alankara. Then it can be called Alankara. Otherwise, it is just a decoration. Every decoration does not reach the level of Alankara in the real sense. Then in Komala, yeah, I gave you an example yesterday. To sharadara garadarasa, kavisa ravisa, smaradi sayakasa. Now such expressions are possible in Anuprasa. The same Alankara can be used in several different ways. So there are many Shabdalankaras, but these two, Yamaka and Anuprasa, are perhaps the most important of them. So we will leave the Shabdalankaras over here because the Arthalankaras are. So we switch over to the Arthalankaras. The Arthalankaras, as I said, are systematically classified into three categories. One is Samya Mulaka Alankara, and the other is Virodha Mulaka Alankara. Samya Mulaka Alankara and Virodha Mulaka Alankara. At this juncture, we will have to understand the terminology which is used by the Indian aesthetes. They talk about three important terms: Upamana, Upameya and Upamana Vachaka. What is Upamana? Upamana is the standard of comparison. Upameya is the object of comparison. And Upamana Vachaka is the phrase which tries to explain the comparison between the two. Now, this is very similar Western notion of simile, where the object of, there is an object of comparison. In case the examples which we normally find in Sanskrit literature, I am repeating the same examples over there. They are extremely repetitive, but I think they explain the notion fairly well. The concept is well explained. The beautiful lady and the moon. This is the normal simile. Chand sa mukhda. Chand sa mukhda. When I say chand sa mukhda, what am I doing? I'm comparing the mukhda with the chand. So why chand? Because chand is a standard of beauty. We consider Chandra as the standard of beauty. So Chandra here, chand becomes here Upamana. And the Upameya, the thing which is being compared with Chandra, is the lady's mukhda. And there is a word called sa. Sa matlab jaisa. Chand jaisa mukhda. Now that sa is that Upamana Vachaka. Here I am comparing two things and I am also establishing the comparison between the two. The lady is as beautiful as the moon. So what I have done, I have kept the lady and the moon on the same level. And there is a connection between the two. Wire jod di donon ko. As beautiful as. This Upamana Vachak Shabda over here is important in simile. Chand sa mukhda. So this is simile, that is Upama. But sometimes normally it is compared, and both the things, the Upameya and the Upamana, are kept at par with each other. But sometimes the poet gets a little more romantic and he tries to put the Upameya above the Upamana. The object of comparison above the standard of comparison. वो चांद से भी खूबसूरत है, वो चांद से खूबसूरत है, ये तो हुई उपमा, वो चांद से भी खूबसूरत है. She is more beautiful than the moon. Now this becomes Utpreksha. Now what exactly is happening? The relationship between the Upameya and the Upamana is changing. Earlier it was on equal level. Now it is lopsided. And lopsided where the object of comparison has surpassed the standard of comparison. This is Utpreksha. Now, in some of the cases, I will not be able to discuss all the alankaras, but I will give you a few examples. In some of the cases, this comparison is just eliminated. Both these things are merged together. Something like वो देखो चांद निकला. If the lady is appearing over there, if the lady is appearing on the scene, if the poet says कि वो देखो चांद निकला, now he is not saying that she is as beautiful as moon or she is more beautiful than the moon. She says वो चांद ही है. ये देखो मेरा चांद निकला. तो वो देखो मेरी जान. When a poet calls somebody मेरी जान, what is he doing? That is, he is trying to merge the standard of comparison and the object of comparison. Because Jaan is something which is dearest to you, which you cannot get separated from your Jaan, your life. And when you call your beloved your Jaan, you are comparing the dearest thing to you with her. So the Jaan is the standard of comparison, and the lady is the object of comparison. But the moment you call Meri Jaan, you merged both the things. You merged the standard of comparison and the object of comparison and made it into a single thing. This is Rupaka, metaphor. The metaphor. This becomes a metaphor. So, do you get the point? So, just by exploiting the relationship between the Upamana and the Upameya, the standard of comparison and the object of comparison, the poet has created so many possibilities of expression. You know, there are so many examples of alankaras which are only based on this comparison. But we may not be able to discuss all of them. So, but sometimes this similarity is not only used on this basic level, it goes a little further. like an example of Drishtanta. In Drishtanta, I'll give you an example from Sanskrit literature, which you must have studied in your childhood. कि उदये सवितः रक्तः, रक्तश्चास्तमने तथा, संपत्त्यौ च विपत्त्यौ च महताम एकरूपता. Have you heard this slogan? उदये सवितः रक्तः, रक्तश्चास्तमने तथा, संपत्त्यौ च विपत्त्यौ च महताम एकरूपता. सूरज जब उगता है, when the sun rises, he is red. When the sun sets, that time also he is red. He is like a great man. Whether he is in a happy position or a sad position, he doesn't change his qualities. Now, only the appearance is not being compared. Now the essence is being compared. Do you get the point? Here the essence is being compared and the essence is spelled out. The comparison has been spelled out where the conclusion is drawn. In Drishtanta, the conclusion, Sampatyau cha vipatyau cha mahatam ekarupata. Here the conclusion is drawn. When this kind of conclusion is drawn, that alankara is known as Drishtanta. But sometimes in Arthantaranyas, something similar is used, but the conclusion is left to the reader. I don't draw the conclusion. The artist doesn't draw the conclusion. It is Arthantaranyas. You are supposed to draw the conclusion. There is a beautiful example in Marathi, but we will also try to find an example in other languages also. Like, Kela jari pot badechi khale, jwala tari te varti ufade. If you try to push the mashal downwards, the flames keep going up. सरफरोशी की तमन्ना अब हमारे दिल में है, देखना है जोर कितना बाजुए कातिल में है. Now the conclusion is not drawn. I am only making a statement. You draw the conclusion. इसका मतलब क्या है तुम ढूंढो. You get the point? केला जरी पोतो बड़े ची खाले, ज्वाला तरी ते वर्ती उपाये. Now I am telling you कि try to push me as much as you want to, but the flame will rise up. So here earlier, Sampatyau cha vipatyau cha mahatam ekarupata is the conclusion which is drawn by the poet. Here the poet is not drawing the conclusion, he is leaving the conclusion to you. This alankara is known as Arthantaranyas. Arthantaranyas. Or this is like an analogy. We use analogies and allegories in English literature. The Drishtantas and Siddhantas, Arthantaranyas are very similar to the allegories and analogies in Western literature. But sometimes, as I was telling you, by juxtaposing things, you get a different kind of beauty. There is an alankara called Deepak in literature, where two things are put together, but they are not compared. They are just juxtaposed, and the juxtaposition is a little lopsided juxtaposition. The phrase which you must have heard in your childhood, "Kaha Raja Bhoj, kaha Gangu Teli." Okay, where one great thing is being juxtaposed with another. Till now, we were trying to juxtapose things of equal status. Now we are trying to juxtapose things which are of drastically different status. The best example is that film song, "Tum gagan ke chandrama ho, main dhara ki dhool hu." नहीं, "Tum महासंगीत के स्वर, मैं अधूरी सांस भर." So one thing is put at the helm of something, and the other is at the, so this is a different kind of comparison, where the virodha is being exploited, where the difference is being exploited. This is Deepaka Alankara. By juxtaposing two drastically different things or things of drastically different status, they are trying to create the beauty of expression. Now this is something different. All these alankaras sometimes are used in visual arts also. Very interesting. It's not very easy to use alankaras in visual art, because the decoration in visual art has a different purpose, and we understand it differently. But this meaningful decoration is also possible in visual arts, and some of the visual artists have used it. We'll talk about it if possible at a later juncture. So in Deepak, the basic thing is Tulya Yogita. The element that is exploited over there is Tulya Yogita. But in the other Virodha Mulaka Alankaras, one Alankara is called Vishaya. Vishaya. So the similarity and the difference, both of them are put together. Kaka Krishna, Pika Krishna को भेद पिक काकयोः वसंत समय प्राप्ते काकः काकः पिक पिक। काका कृष्ण, कौवा काला होता है, पिक कृष्ण, कोयल भी काली होती है। को भेद पिक काकयोः, if both of them are black, what is the difference between the two? वसंत समय प्राप्त है, काका काका पिक पिक। Let Vasanta come, let the spring come, and Kauva remains Kauva and Koel remains Koel. So here the similarity and the difference, both the things are put together and the beautiful expression has been created. This Alankara is known as Vishaya Alankara. And then there is Virodhabhasa. There is Abhasa of Virodha. There is no difference, but there is an appearance of difference. One of the poets who was, in those days, the poets used to approach the king. And if they recite a good poem, they were given a good award. So one of the poets approached Bhoja, and he said that, oh Bhoja, people keep telling you that there is no dearth of anything in your kingdom. किसी भी चीज की कमी नहीं है, सब कुछ मिलता है. They are liars. They are liars. I have been staying in your kingdom since last month. Now what he means, copper in those days was used to write the Danapatras. The Danapatra was engraved on copper. You know that. It was called Tamrapatra. And the steel was used for making swords and making handcuffs, bedi. So what is he trying to say? कि तुम्हारे राज में तांबा और लोहा तो मिलता ही नहीं है. Which means all that copper has been used for writing Danapatras. And all the steel has been used for making weapons. So you are such a great king that you have jailed all your enemies, and you are such a generous king that you have used all the copper of your kingdom to give Danapatras to people. So in a way, initially he is criticizing the king, but indirectly he is praising the king. Now this is called Virodhabhasa. There is a paradox. This is called paradox. Apparently he is saying something and actually he means something different. So these are Virodhamulaka Alankaras. And then there is Shlesha. Shlesha is an Alankara where the word and the meaning, both of them are inseparable. I am sorry, sometimes I give examples from vernacular literature because you find better examples in vernacular literature of these alankaras rather than English. In English it is very difficult to find. We will not be able to explain them, and I am not a Sanskritist. So every time I am not studied Sanskrit literature so deeply that I can call out illustrations from Sanskrit literature on my fingertips. So there is a beautiful illustration of pun in Marathi. I'll explain it to you. Nala and Damayanti, you know the story. Nala and they met, they fell in love with each other. And now Damayanti is all the time missing Nala, and that is making her unwell. बीमार हो गई है उसके याद में. And naturally her father is worried. Her father immediately, who is a king, he immediately sends somebody to call the doctor. He says, get the Vaidya and ask him to treat her. Now this lady, Damayanti, wants to confide in her mother. She wants to tell the truth to her mother, and she tells the mother. The shloka says, "Ti komalangi zagi zali, haluch mag bole, औषध न लगे मजला, परिसुने माता बरे म्हणून डोले." वो कोमलांगी जाग गई और धीरे से उसने कहा, औषध न लगे मजला. औषध, दवा, न लगे मजला, न लगे, मुझे दवा की जरूरत नहीं है. बट व्हाट शी मेंट, औषध न लगे मला. औषध न लगे मला, न, माय दवा इज नल. मेरी दवा नल है. औषध न लगे मजला, मेरी असली दवा तो नल है. तुम ये दवा क्यों मंगवा रहे हो? नाउ हियर द वर्ड इज कंपोज्ड इन सो स्मार्टली दैट the same word, if uttered differently, can issue different meanings. This is called Shlesha. This is called pun. There are beautiful examples of pun in English literature. Rather, English language is known for beautiful puns. But here I wanted to give you an example of vernacular literature. So this is called Ubhaya Alankar, where Samya Mulaka Alankar, Virodhamulaka Alankara and Ubhaya Alankara, where the word and the meaning, both of them are equally important. So this is Alankara. Alankara is very interesting. Unfortunately, in the later period, they were exploited to such an extent that the soul of the poetry was lost, and only the Alankaras remains. People kept toiling with they kept playing with the fanciful Alankaras, and then the literature started getting more and more gimmicky. That kind of literature in Sanskrit poetics is called Chitra Kavya. If the literature doesn't have soul in it, if it doesn't have rasa in it, if it doesn't have dhvani in it, and if it has only Alankara, it is a kavya, it is a work of art which is like a dead body, being embellished with all the gold ornamentation. They say that this kind of literature is not a good literature. So Alankara is a very important theory, but at the same time, Alankara is to be used with moderation. This perhaps is the conclusion of theory of Alankara.